Hey guys, Dr. Aaron Ernst here. Thanks so much for joining us for episode 5 of Q&A with Dr. A. Love it. You guys are still sending in your questions, and it looks like this is really starting to impact a lot of people. We're even getting comments on how great these episodes are, so I really hope you find them informative. Don't forget you can join us every single Saturday on 11:10 a.m. at 3 o'clock for our Ask Dr. Ernst show. Also 10 a.m. on 1660, which is America's Pulse here in Charlotte. And if you have a question that comes up either during this episode or you'd like to submit one for the next episode, scroll down under this video and you'll find a section that has a button that says submit your questions here. And of course, we will review them, answer them, and give you all the great information that you expect. So first question tonight says, what are some things I can do when I get a headache? And this, of course, can not only impact the person who asked, but there's a lot of people that deal with headaches. First of all, I want to let you know most headaches are typically because of a dehydration effect. So if you think about it, your skull's wrapped in liquid. Actually, not your skull, but your brain is wrapped in liquid, and then your skull surrounds all of that. So if you start to get dehydrated, your cerebral spinal fluid gets a little thick, and your brain has to expand to fill in the gap, and that can be a classic sign of headaches. So pretty much mostly just drinking water sometimes will help with that. But remember, your cerebral spinal fluid is salty, so you want to put about 1/8 of a teaspoon of Celtic salt into your water and drink it, and you'll often find most of the time the headaches will clear out. Some other things that work really well is magnesium. We've got to remember the blood vessels that supply oxygen and nutrition into the brain are vascular, and they have muscles around them. So if we can get the magnesium to be a natural smooth muscle relaxer, which it is, you can open the blood vessels and give more nutrition to the head and the brain, which also helps. And we've had some of our patients even mention that if you take lavender oil and peppermint and rub it around the temples, it has sort of a soothing effect, which can also work really well. The challenge, of course, is a lot of people jump straight to Tylenol or aspirin or Advil, which is more or less going to be a cover-up. And even though it may make the headache go away, they usually come back later on because we're not addressing the cause. Remember, the cause is either dehydration, some sort of vascular decrease, or neurological decrease, which is why there are many people that talk about going to a chiropractor, getting an adjustment done, and then their headaches start clearing out, or they never come back ever again. So remember, drink lots of water. You can also use the magnesium, and you can get adjusted, which is really, really good. Next question says, I've been a patient of Maximized Living for some time. I've lost 30 pounds. My gosh, congratulations. And several inches. I've dropped dress sizes. I feel great, but I'm struggling with cellulite around my legs and my arms and stomach. What's something good to do? So first of all, congratulations. I think in and of itself, losing 30 pounds and dropping dress sizes is something to celebrate. But let's talk about this cellulite stuff. So, a couple things you can do to start attacking that is ramp up your detoxification process. Cellulite is sort of just this nasty, compound that kind of gets underneath our skin and other areas. But if you go through some heavier detoxification phases, you can pretty much pull out and burn a lot of the cellulite out. One way to do that is to sort of ramp up your dosage. So because you're a Maximized Living patient, we have something called the detox system. And the traditional dose is 2 capsules in the morning and about 2 capsules in the evening. So you can, for a couple days, do that. And then for the next couple days, double the dose. And for the next couple days, triple the dose. And then for the next couple days, double the dose, and then go back to your standard dose, and that's called a detoxing ramp. It can be very effective at knocking cellulite out. Listen, you can also take coconut oil and rub it on those areas. So you said legs, arms, and stomach. So just rubbing coconut oil on that area. It gets absorbed in through the skin, and again, remember, wherever the fat is where your body will start to burn fat, so you can encourage some natural fat burning by sticking it there. Lastly, and I'm a big fan of this for cellulite, is something called dry skin brushing. In essence, they make this brush that has little bristles on it that you don't wet, and you just simply scrape it along your skin wherever the cellulite is. Now here's the important thing. You always scrape towards your heart. So if you're doing your left arm, you would scrape this way to the heart, and obviously the right arm you scrape this way, but the stomach you need to scrape up to the heart because it pumps lymphatics, and it also helps to detoxify and drain the skin. So always remember, brush in the direction of your heart, and before you know it, with the ramped up detox process, the coconut oil rub, and also doing that, I think you'll knock that out pretty fast. Another thing that helps really well is, this is just globally for cellulite, is apple cider vinegar water Mix it together, usually in equal parts, and drink that on a regular basis. Again, it has the ability to sort of activate the detoxification process, which is huge for cellulite. Next question says, with eggs, what's the difference between all the different types? So we have vegetarian fed, pasture raised, free range. And this is a huge question because we get asked this quite a lot. And in fact, it's very debatable. The traditional knowledge, of course, is that a brown egg is healthier than a white egg just because of its color. And I'll be first to tell you that it's pretty much meaningless. The color has to do with the color of the chicken. So brown chickens with brown feathers, they lay brown eggs, and white chickens with white feathers lay white eggs. So the color is pretty much a moot point. The terminology, though, that you'll see on the packages is where you can kind of get sucked into a bunch of marketing. So all natural basically is meaningless. It means that they're fed what they're supposed to be fed, which is what they think they're supposed to be fed, like corn and rice and soy. So it's certainly not natural. Really, in all essence, it has absolutely no meaning at all. And in my opinion, you should avoid things that say they're all natural. Hormone-free pretty much doesn't mean anything either. Most chickens aren't given hormones ever. That's more along the lines of like cattle. They do generally sometimes give them antibiotics, but mostly it's cows that are given hormones, not chickens. But again, it's a marketing ploy. Next is vegetarian fed, and I find this funny because chickens by nature are not vegetarians. So to say that it's a vegetarian fed chicken is not necessarily the best thing that you want. Remember, chickens are supposed to eat, bugs and worms and snails and ants and things to that effect. They also do eat grass and they eat vegetable things, but you don't really want a primarily 100% vegetarian fed chicken, partly because vegetarian fed chickens are also eating corn and soy and rice because those are vegetables, mostly GMO fed or grain fed. So stay away from the all natural vegetarian hormone free chicken and also eggs. Now we get into the cage freeze, and here's what's unique about that. Just because it's not caged doesn't mean that it's outside. Cage-free means it just is it's able to roam around. So let's look at like the room I'm in. If there was a chicken running around this room, it would be labeled cage-free because it's not in a cage, but it's also not outside. So watch out for like organic, vegetarian-fed, cage-free. You're just paying for the marketing on the bag or the box for that. You get into the organic realms, you're doing a little bit better. I'd rather it eat organic feed rather than non-organic GMO feeds. But again, the problem still is even an organic fed chicken is being fed organic corn and rice and grains, which we want to stay away from. They found out, of course, the more grains a chicken eats, the more omega-6 oils are in its eggs, and that's never a good thing. Now we start getting into pasture raised, which we're getting a little bit better now because that means they can go outside and walk around and eat what they're supposed to eat or try to fend for themselves. So now you also have to watch out for the hybridization of names. So an organic, vegetarian-fed, pasture-raised egg, still a problem with that. They're outside, but they're being fed grains. You want completely cage-free, pasture-raised, non-vegetarian eggs. And in my opinion, now we're starting to look at probably the best egg you can find and also the best chicken you can find. There is an amazing resource that we discovered called cornucopia.org. They have a website you can go to, and it'll actually give you various criteria of up to 136 different egg producers because, of course, eggs are under a big food market. And we found out, of course, that sometimes the highest priced egg is not always the healthiest. So watch out for the marketing within eggs. And it also applies to chickens, too. Just because a chicken is, vegetarian doesn't mean the meat is always the best. So you want, free range, pasture raised, wild chickens, etc., something like that. So hopefully that helps to answer the egg question. Next question says, I have some hormone issues, mood swings, fatigues, sometimes cravings, I'm assuming for some type of a food. And I've got concerns that there's emotional connections related to hormones. What can I do that's natural to help? So first of all, let's just talk about if you've got a hormone issue, I suggest you come to my anti-aging and longevity conference because we know hormones have everything to do with aging. There's probably some information on the screen below on how you can register for that. The event is on Saturday, July 30th. We are about to sell out though, so knowing that it's Thursday night and it's about a week away, click that link or call that number and see if you can get on our wait list or onto the actual event list. But here's the thing with almost all hormones. You have to recognize the imbalance is typically because some of your hormone systems are out of balance. And hormone systems involve the adrenal gland, they involve the digestive system, they also involve your liver. So just as a fun fact, your digestive system makes 80 to 90% of all of your brain hormones, epinephrine, norepinephrine, serotonin, dopamine. And when we talk about feeling good and having mood swings, that's where the majority of our hormone imbalance is in our brain, but not because our brain's not working right, but because your gut is not working right, potentially. So one of the best things you can do to balance your hormones is basically find out how to fix your intestines. And it's funny, I was talking about a patient with this the other day, and they said, but I don't understand, like I go regularly, my digestive system works. And when I say your digestive system may be non-functional, I'm not talking about you're not filling the toilet 3 times a day. I'm talking about on a cellular level. It's either leaking, there's a subtle infection, there's an imbalance in bacteria, you may have a leaky gut, may be inflamed. So just disconnect how often you go with how good your gut is. It's been estimated that 80 to 90% of Americans have a digestive issue, and that's what I'm talking about, gut health. So one thing you can do is you can go through the 4 R's of repairing an intestine. Remove the inflammatory foods, so that's corn, soy, wheat, rice, sugar, oats, etc. You can replace those with foods that heal, bone broth, coconut oil, fermented foods, things like that. Then you want to repair the damage that's already been done. That unfortunately sometimes requires testing so you can find out what the damage is. But on the average, if you use some soothing agents, again like bone broth or even coconut oil or glutamine or probiotic bacteria, the intestines replace themselves about every 14 to 28 days. So you just need to let it repair. And then lastly, you want to reestablish the bacterial relationship within the guts. And that comes from fermented foods and probiotic bacteria, things like that. Another thing that's critical with balancing hormones, just as a FYI for you since you were asking, vitamin D is actually the precursor for a lot of hormones. So is cholesterol. So if your cholesterol levels are out of balance, either medicated or they're not in the right track, that's the building block for almost every hormone we have. And vitamin D is a carrier for a lot of our hormones. So if your vitamin D levels are low, your hormones are going to be out of whack. If your cholesterol levels are off, again, your hormones are going to be out of whack. So why don't we maybe assess not the hormone issue, but look upstream and find out why is there a hormone issue. Another fun fact why a lot of people's hormones are out of balance is we're just stressed out like crazy. Your adrenal glands are supposed to handle the traditional fight or flight response, and the challenge becomes you get an email and you think that's a lion pouncing on you, or somebody calls you like a family member and you start freaking out as if like you're being chased by a bear. And part of that is the conditioning process, but if our adrenal glands are on overload, then our hormones become unbalanced. So possibly consider vitamin B6 and ashwagandha, green coffee, those sort of adaptogenic herbs that help to make you deal with stress. Lastly, for hormones too, can't forget to mention CBD oil. It's one of the greatest, most studied oils that's got a benefit to balancing your hormones. And again, we're going to talk a lot about CBD oils at our Anti-Aging and Longevity Conference. So make sure you come to that. Next question says, I cannot eat cabbage. Are there any fermented vegetables in the market that are not cabbage-based? And how do I ferment my own? Great question. So, first of all, sauerkraut, cabbage-based. Kimchi is a bok choy, so there's one you could try, but it's still in the cabbage family. So depending upon how you know you can't eat cabbage, we may want to investigate that. I'm going to take a stab at this and say you can't eat cabbage because either it causes an upset stomach or some sort of reaction, or you've been tested on a food sensitivity level and maybe cabbage came back as like a 2+ or a 3+. For those of you who have never heard of this, you can actually get blood testing done that will find out how sensitive you are to foods. So for example, if you come back highly sensitive to cabbage, it would be a suggestion to avoid it completely for 4 to 6 months to allow for the immune response to calm down. We're finding out today that a lot of people's autoimmune conditions, so MS and lupus and even things like rheumatoid arthritis and degenerative conditions like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's are because we keep eating food that technically our bodies are allergic to. Not anaphylactic allergic where you lose breathing, your throat swells up, you got to go to the emergency room. This is like a subtle immune response where you kick off an antibody to the food. And if you constantly eat it, you're constantly producing antibodies. And with time, the body will start to attack itself. So if you can't eat cabbage because you're sensitive on a blood test, then of course we got to get rid of it completely for 4 to 6 months. Most of the traditional fermented foods like sauerkraut and things like that are going to be cabbage-based. So how do we go outside of that? Well, there is some that you can find typically at either Whole Foods or Earth Fare or Healthy Home Market that will be either beet or again a bok choy based. And so those are commercially available. You can purchase them. But I really like the second part of your question, which is how do I ferment my own? And here's what's interesting. You can ferment pretty much any vegetable. Celery can be fermented, carrots, beets. You can even ferment things like cucumbers and various roots like carrots again and ginger and turmeric. So I'm a huge fan of fermenting your own things, partly because it creates a massive amount of living probiotic bacteria, and you can really have fun when you start doing the fun things like onions and parsnips and even turnips and those sorts of things. So I'll give you sort of my quick and dirty how to ferment over this video, but don't forget you can go to our website and we have a whole resource available for you on fermentation under the recipes section. It's just askdrernst.com/recipes. But it's basically this. You take your thing, whatever it is, and you slice it as thin as possible. Or you can cube them or cut them into wedges, whatever you want. Just cut them up. And then pack them into a mason jar. And you can do two things. You can use salted water, which would be just fill the jar probably to about maybe an inch away, add some salt and pack everything down. It needs to be underneath the water. And you just let it sit for a couple days, and the salts will sort of activate a brining process. The natural bacteria on the vegetables will start to ferment. Second side of it is you can use naturally salted liquids like celery juice. And this is one I tend to do. So I'll shred up a bunch of stuff, onions and celery and carrots and garlic even, and pack it all together and then pour celery juice into it so it fills it all the way up. And of course you have to juice the celery to get that. But the natural salts in the celery do the same thing. They activate the brining process and it starts to ferment. Typically it takes about 3 to 4 days, and you'll know when it's ready because it starts to kind of fizzle. It has that sort of like sauerkraut flavor. But man, have fun with it. You can do a whole bunch of things. Technically, I believe if you Google how to ferment foods, you'll find over 133 different websites that can also teach you how to do it. But go straight to my website because we have some great resources for you, even a PDF document you can download with some fermentation recipes. My only recommendation again is don't use table salt. Use either Celtic salt or Himalayan salts because they work really, really well. Next question says, I wanted to see if there are any ideas on how to treat dizziness and the symptoms of vertigo. Mostly it happens when I'm laying down or falling asleep. And so what can we do about that? And so if it's a positional thing, so like for example, when you're laying down you get dizzy, or when you sit up you get dizzy, that can be known as benign positional paroxysmal vertigo, BPPV. And that's classic of something called an ear stone getting dislodged. Basically, if you think about it, there are 3 planes within all forms of gravity and everything else. So you have X, Y, and Z. And so your ear canals are made of the same 3 planes. So you have a stone that runs in each plane. So if I lean forward, I'm hitting, say, like one axis. If I lean this way, I'm hitting another axis. If I rotate, I hit another axis. So possibly what's going on is when you lay down, that stone is moving, and it makes your brain think you're moving even when you're not. This can get a little crazy because sometimes it can activate some nausea and even vomiting and stuff to that effect. But there are some exercises that can be done for that. So if you go on Google and you just type in paroxysmal vertigo exercises, they basically show you how to do certain things. And in essence, what it is, believe it or not, is laying down and let your head tilt off the side, and rotating side to side, and sort of doing like sit-ups with your neck. And they can help. But remember that this can also come from other things. There's something known as vagal nerve compression, which can cause a severe amount of dizziness and vertigo and things to that effect. That in essence is when your skull sort of drops on one side. The vagus nerve comes right out about right here. And of course, ear controls are at that zone as well. So if you compress the nerve, you start to decrease the function of the ear canal. And that's where people have gone to chiropractors, or they've done physical therapy or some sort of sacro-occipital technique or skull releases, and it starts to clear out. Don't forget there's also foods that can make you get dizzy. So I know you said something to the effect of happens a lot when you lay down. So I don't know, maybe something you're eating before or after or something to that effect. But various foods that are high in caffeine and even like natural sugars or white sugars can cause that. So wine and various nuts and seeds and stuff like that can be sometimes high in various things that can create a vertigo sense. So in essence, the best thing I would suggest for you is, try to keep your eating nothing after 8 o'clock. See if it's a food-related source, or potentially get tested. In our clinic, we can do a full workup of nutritional exams all the way to even neurological exams. I'm not saying that you have to do that, but we have worked with a lot of people that have dizziness, vertigo, ringing in their ears. There's many, many things that can be done to help with that. Next question says, what food can revolutionize my joints? I'm going to hopefully assume that means like there's some sort of joint discomfort, arthritis, something to that effect. And when we talk about joints, the number one thing you have to understand is there's liquid inside the joints, just like a lubricant, so it can increase the flexibility. What often happens with arthritis is it starts to dehydrate the joint. So the liquid comes out, the bones move closer together, the cartilage starts rubbing. And what's interesting is that would cause pain regardless of what's going on within your body. So when we talk about joint rebuilding and joint health, let's look at things you could eat that are made of joints. Now, typically you're not chewing on joints, from the bones of an animal or something to that effect. So we want to figure out how can we get the nutrients of that joint into your diet. And this is where bone broth and even like cartilage broths and things like that are very powerful, because you can in essence make your own supplement. So if you use water and apple cider vinegar and you drop some bones in, you want to ask the butcher for a knuckle or a cartilage joint or like a shoulder joint, because the joints have more of the hyaluronic acid, the chondroitin, and the glucosamine than would just say like a bone. So a femur bone's got the bone and it has a little meat and it has the marrow. But if you get a joint like a knuckle or a shoulder or a wrist, now you have even more collagen and other components for the joint itself, since you had a joint question. The other thing you can do is you can actually go out and buy what's known as like joint collagen repairs and even beef collagen proteins. There's some companies that actually make them as a protein powder that you can add to smoothies and something to that effect. But another thing that's really interesting is olives and olive oil. It actually has this product in it, I guess if you want to call it a product, but a component known as lubricant. And what they've discovered is that it can lubricate your joints. So if it was me, I'd be rubbing olive oil all over the skin of whatever joints are hurting. I'd be eating olive oil on a regular basis. You can take it straight as a tablespoon or two. You can put it onto the different foods that you're eating. It makes it great salad dressing. And then of course, making bone broths and using joint broths is another great way. Something else that's really interesting is there's this component of cherries called anthocyanin. And what it is actually what gives the cherry kind of like that nice red color. Anthocyanins have been found to be anti-inflammatory for joints. And you may have heard of this product called tart cherry juice or even tart cherry extracts. Sometimes when you go to like your natural food stores and you say, my joints hurt, they'll take you straight to the cherry extracts. The reason for that is the anthocyanins can work really well. So there's another superfood for your joints. And lastly, of course, apples, specifically the red apples, have quercetin, which is a really good anti-inflammatory, and it works great for your joints. But don't forget about turmeric and even like curcumin, really great global anti-inflammatories that work great for joints. But again, as we kind of finish out today's show, I want to talk about how joint pains, headaches, a vertigo, these are all warning signs. So think of it as like this is how your body's talking to you. And even though I'm giving you great things that can help you to make all of the warning signs disappear, and they're natural, the bigger question needs to be, well, why is this happening in the first place? Yes, you can use olive oil and you can drink more water and you can do all these things I talked to you guys about today, and they're helpful and it's great. But remember, that's your body trying to tell you, red alert, wake up, something's wrong. Most pain is present because it's trying to tell you, don't use that joint until you find out why it hurts. So we're sometimes all too quick to jump onto, what can I do naturally to make my pain go away? When in fact, the best natural thing you can do is figure out what's causing it in the first place. Most pain is related to inflammation. Most inflammation is related to your diet, and most dietary issues are too much dairy, too much wheat and grains, way too much sugar, too many toxins. So across the board, if you want to answer every question you can possibly, you switch to, say, like a cellular healing diet, you decrease your inflammation, you exercise regularly, you detox your body on a daily basis, you make sure your nerve system's working at 100%, you can pretty much answer all of these questions with those 4 or 5 health tips. So again, thank you guys for tonight, for joining us. I know it was a little short and sweet, but we're right about our 25 to 30 minute mark. And the nice thing about it is that gives me an opportunity to throw out the invitation for you to ask more questions. So again, scroll down underneath this video. You'll see a link that you can click that says how to contact us with your questions. They are private. No one else sees them other than just me. And sometimes we even give you a little bit of love as we respond back to them through email. Next, of course, is every Saturday at 3 o'clock here in Charlotte, 11:10 a.m., 99.3 FM is my radio show, Ask Dr. Ernst. Join us this week. We're talking a lot about things in cholesterol and what your doctor does not want you to know about heart disease, and also 10 a.m. on 1660. And don't forget, this is the last week you can register for my up-and-coming Anti-Aging and Longevity Conference. As of today, Thursday night, it's about 99% sold out. I think there's only about 7 or 8 seats left. Once that goes sold out, it goes to a waiting list, and then we have a dinner coming up in August. So there's more information below on everything. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Until then.